vibe of the bow, but the Bebo P. This is Black British History, brought to you by Scribbler P in a UK garage style. So today we're going to talk about immigration, which means when you're in one end but you move to a next end. But not just Peckham to Elephant and Castle, I'm talking far. Like brothers were jumping in boats, fam, no car. And it started time ago when brothers was still in black and white. And places like Jamaica hadn't developed yet, like no Buju, no Sean Paul, no Vibes Cartel, no Bounty Killer, no dancehall, full stop. So Rastas were running to England, bruv, that's how desperate things were. Sharp suit, sharp suit, sharp suit. When I say, you say, we say, you say, make some affordable housing for the newly arrived immigrants. Black families live peacefully and holy shit, she's white. Integration. Mixed race people, we used to call them chalk eyes. Now we know that's not nice. Progress. Big up the ladies looking slender and fine. Mine. And the man then was put to work, lifting better, bigger bits of wood. Wagwan cuz. This old lady stole some black babies. Bear babies. Look at all the youth them pun road. Don't touch my hair. Some of the white people were getting vexed about the immigrants having money and sex. But bun that, black people was flourishing and had bare money. Eventually, brothers were even presenting the news. Big shout out to young Trevor McDonald with a rinse and curl. Things got so good, immigrants even changed into colour. Yams, watermelon, fuck a day. Things weren't perfect though because it was still ages before PlayStations and Garage was invented. Hang tight man like Crash Bandicoot. But soon Garage was invented, all thanks to immigration. Bye over to see both. Tune in next time for more Black British History with man like me, Scribbler P.
The movement for justice by any means necessary, and what I brought along was really to talk about the Widen Windrush campaign. Now everyone I'm sure knows about the Windrush Scandal that happened, and in a way it's a shortened term because the reality is that the abuse of the Home Office has been going for a long time, and the widening out of their attacks, the racism of immigration laws and what it's allowed and empowered the Home Office and its agencies to do so far as taking people, locking people up, deporting people, not letting people back into the country. They've widened the number of people falling into those traps. And so the scandal that everyone knows about has been a long time brewing. In a way, it broke out under the title of Windrush Scandal, but it really meant everyone who fell in the category, everyone who had come here before 1973 would count as a generation of people who came at a time when there was free movement across the whole Commonwealth. So anyone, whatever part of the British Commonwealth you're born in, you could have the same passport as someone born in Birmingham or London here. You're a British and Commonwealth citizen. And you could come and go with no immigration controls. When it's going back some, but it's important to know because the scandal in 2018 exposed what was a scandal from 1960s and 70s onwards. Because what made people vulnerable was that all the rights of people to come and go was chipped away and then just taken away in the 60s and 70s and solidified in the 80s in a way that meant you could no longer come. And for those people who had come before 73, who may have come as 40s, the 30s and sooner, not just like the 50s and 60s, but those people who had come often sacrificed a lot to come, including leaving part of their family behind. And so there's a lot of people who, as children, was left behind while their family came to try to earn money and had the idea that they would reunite later on. And oftentimes left, like let's say, their children there with the grandparents back home whilst they came here and worked and sent money home. So in 1968, under a Labour government, when they was, on the one hand, you had a whipping up of racism, you had Enoch Powell and all of this, whipping up racism, saying, oh, you know, these are people going to take our culture or whatever they're lying to white people and whipping up racism and blaming black people. In a response to that, you have a lot of a fight against racism. You have the bringing in of the Race Relations Act, saying that putting up colour bars on businesses and shops is illegal. The no blacks, no Irish, no dogs, etc., that's illegal in the country. But the Immigration Act that they brought in the same year put a colour bar up on the country. And it was racist. It was racist. It was the idea that too many non-white people had a right to come here, and that if they did, there'd be too many. And so there needed to be a change. So the rights across the British Commonwealth were changed. And they were changed again with the Tory government in 71. And they brought in what they called a patriality rule, which in their discussions, they weren't even sure how to exactly pronounce it. It was like a new idea. But the point of it was, how do we find a way to protect the people from what we call the old colonies, but meaning white people in Australia, in Canada, and places like that? How do we make sure that they can still come and go, but we stop all these other people from having that same right? So the patriality rule said that if you have a parent or a grandparent who's both British and born in Britain, then you can come and you'll get your permanent residency, you'll move towards citizenship, you have a right. So it ties Britishness to ancestry, but really to race. And it means quite literally, it doesn't even matter if you ever knew that grandparent. It doesn't matter if you never met them in your life. The fact that you have a grandparent that was British and born in Britain means you can come. You can kind of seize some rights here. Now with the Windrush Generation, and this is where we are campaigning under a hashtag Widen Windrush, with that scheme, there are many things to be said about the absolute disgrace that anybody was told, you don't belong here. Oh, you've worked here 30, 40 years, doing the night shifts in our NHS, propping up our economy, and we're going to turn around and say, well, we're not sure that you belong here. Now you, with the burden of proof on your shoulders, you show us that you have a right to be here, because we don't think your 30, 40 years worth of taxes is enough, or whatever it is. That the disgrace of what happened with the Windrush Scandal really, but it only uncovered the racism that the government has constantly relied on, party after party, decade after decade. The divide and rule of racism is a political weapon, it's a political tool. But even if you've got through that battle, and maybe you're even filling in the massive long form to get compensation, and maybe you'll get compensation, you can still literally be watching your own grandkids getting deported because they're not part of that scheme. Because even if you're accepted as being British, because you came before 73, on the Windrush boat or any boat from any part of the British Commonwealth, Africa, Caribbean, South Asia, any of the places, even if you're accepted as being British, you're not British enough to pass that on to your children or your grandchildren. So your descendants that you left behind when you first came can't derive the right to come here. And that's a disgrace. So we, as Movement for Justice, have long been fighting racism. We've always seen racism as a pivotal, it's not that it's the only battle we have, but it's a pivotal battle to anything else, anything for justice and equality. You can't survive your fight without fighting racism because of the way that it divides people against each other. We've been campaigning at the detention centres to shut down detention, fight for amnesty, for asylum seekers, you know, for all sorts of rights. But we were meeting so many people, and the Windrush Scandal actually was the reason that they got out of detention, because when that scandal broke loose, there was a bunch of people that the government was very embarrassed to be seen that they were still detaining. So we had people that they didn't come before 73, they came in the 1990s, they came in the 2000 and something. But if they had any link back to the Windrush generation, then we're saying they have a right to be here too, that should have been always included in the Windrush scheme. Because how can you say that their parents or their grandparents can be British, but they can be deported just because by the incident of when they were born, that they were left behind? Do you know what I mean? It's unacceptable. And it ought to be as scandalous as the rest of the Windrush scandal is. We want the Windrush scheme expanded to all the families and descendants of the entire Windrush generation, wherever in the Commonwealth they'd come from. We want a lot more than that too. Like, we're for opening the borders, we're for an amnesty for all immigrants, and all sorts of things. But this Windrush scheme should have always been expanded, and the Home Office had the discretion to do it. They don't need a change of law to do it. The scheme goes as far as saying that if you came when you was under 18 up to, I think it's 1988, then you can claim under the Windrush scheme to get your papers. If you have an immigration problem, you can claim your papers. But what about the people that came in the 90s after the grandparents they were left with have passed away, and the only family they have left now is right here in Britain? They've got younger siblings that were born here after their parents came. They're the oldest, and they don't have a right. And then you have all the people who left for a bit of time and aren't allowed back in. You have all the people, there's so much. But we live in extended families. Sometimes it's the aunts and uncles that were the most closest relative. Why don't they count? The Home Office will say, well, you're not close enough, because it's only a parent and child directly. That's unacceptable, and it doesn't take account of how families actually function. So that's our campaign. We did a launch in Parliament and things like that. There's a number of MPs, in particular Janet Davey down in Lewisham East, who seized it and took it forward. But the real thing is, we need more cases. We have a number of cases. We've made applications to Windrush Task Force. We know that they're going to get told no, because they came at the wrong time. But the point is to take the case forward and then fight them at judicial review after they're told no. You have to get a decision and then you can challenge it. And that's what we're looking to do. But we need a movement, we need a groundswell. We need people to be as outraged at the idea of any of our relatives being deported. It's not just one generation. This affects all the younger generations too, and we have to fight. And if we win, we'd be defeating the Home Office on something really important. The Windrush Scandal shook them to the point that the Home Secretary had to resign. That's a big deal. Theresa May, after watching people drown in the Mediterranean Sea, still did not feel that she had to resign her job. You know, there is a lot of things Theresa May introduced. She never resigned over it. Because too many people in Britain feel that we're in an integrated and mixed society, and we don't want to let go of that. We don't want a society to be more torn along racist lines than it already is. And we have a problem with Brexit doing that again. We have to fight. So yeah, that's the campaign. We're looking for more cases to come forward and get involved, and also for people to raise it, because there's a lot of people living in the shadows who won't realize that there's any campaign that affects them, that's fighting for their rights. They don't know that it's there because a lot of people are scared to come forward. So it's going to take the word of mouth a great deal. So I've got materials, and if there's any questions, I'm very happy to talk about this issue all day long. But, you know, I've got materials here for you to take away as well, so really need support.
Get a round of applause for Antonia. I just wanted to add a few things before I open up for questions and contributions. I think I'm just trying to obviously relate everything that you've said to why we're here today, why we're celebrating Black History Month, why it's important. And for me, the lesson that I'm drawing is that actually it's important for us to fight for the things that we want. It's important for us to campaign and, you know, to demand. And what's the quote? Power gives nothing without demand, right? Like, it's important for us to demand the things that we want. It's important for us to fight for the things that we want. And I just want to say that sometimes, you know, people like to say immigration is a hot button issue and stuff like that. And it took me a while in my early activist time to, not a while, but it took me being involved in politics to actually realize that immigration 100% of the time is about race, and it's very, very linked to racism. It's how you divide people. It's how you say somebody doesn't belong to this nationhood, so I can treat them however I want. But it's also the way that the rules keep changing. So I'm going to tell you a personal story of mine. So I came to this country to join my mum. We eventually got indefinite leave to remain. And can anybody tell me what the word of indefinite leave to remain means? It means that you can indefinitely remain somewhere. Why is it that a couple of years ago the government changed the definition for indefinite leave to remain to say that if you leave the country for more than 3 years, you can't return? And this is really important because they keep changing the rules. Everything that is hard fought for and won for, they keep changing the rules because this is ultimately about excluding people. It's about excluding people that are not white, in a sense, but are people that contribute a great deal to this country. And sometimes I hate making the argument about, you know, immigrants contribute so much. You know what? People deserve to be wherever it is that their family is. People deserve to stay and live in places that they've built friendship, they've built life, their kids go to school, they're happy, they have jobs, they have things. Like, people deserve that. Like, that should be our human right. We shouldn't make this arbitrary. It should never be tied to what we can economically give somewhere, right? Like, we deserve to live wherever it is we want to live. So I think it's really important. And I just want to say, before the whole Windrush thing kind of broke into public consciousness and stuff, I mean, Antonio, remember this, we were going to lots of demos for lots of people from Jamaica who were being deported, you know, we're doing lots of things around the issue, and at the time, no, people weren't picking up. And the other thing I wanted to say is really important to have people who hold power also like tap into your case, because it had to take, you know, a lot of journalists from The Guardian, The Independent and stuff to do, you know, human stories on the people that were affected, particularly the gentleman who had cancer and was going to die without treatment. You know, unfortunately, we had to tug on people's heartstrings. We had to say, look, people are dying because of this, for people to sit up and pay attention. But again, it's an example of, if you don't fight, if you don't demand for what is ultimately yours, you know, you will die in silence and nobody would care because you haven't demanded what is yours. So I think it's really important that we continue to speak on this issue. I think it's really important, everything Antonio said, that the Windrush thing doesn't only affect people at a certain time. Like, people that have ties and families and relatives here should be able to stay. Like, it is people's human right where their family is for them to be there and to live a good life. And it isn't always the case that we have to say it's because of what people economically contribute. Like, our worth is not based on what we can economically contribute. Our worth is that we're human beings and we're in this world, and actually we need to be treated as such. So I'm gonna end on that note and see if anybody has got anything they want to say, any contributions they want to make, or we can just come around and give you the leaflet. Oh, you've got something to say. Okay. I think you might have to come up, you know. Yeah. Join us.
Just a quick one. So yeah, it's interesting what you're saying about the Home Office and how they're definitely trying to change certain things. So one thing I realized as well with the indefinite leave to remain, when they grant it to people, usually it was in your passport, but now it's biometric. Now, if you're someone with indefinite leave to remain, if you look on your biometric, you realize it has an expiry date, which is in 2024, and that's across the board. So what that means is you have indefinite leave to remain, but you're going to need to renew your biometric in 2024, and they can deny the renewal. So that's another way that they're now doing it to make sure that, yeah, you have indefinite leave, but it can still be taken away from you, or you can still be stripped of the right of living in this country permanently. And regarding Theresa May as well, when you were talking about the hostile government, one thing that she put in place as well was immigrants, in terms of doctors and nurses, there was a cap of 20,000 a year. So even if you meet all the criteria to be a doctor to come and work in the UK, if you're the 20,001, your application's denied. Now, because of Brexit and all the European nurses have left, and we're struggling now with nurses. Theresa May had to remove the cap last year because she realized we need more nurses. So now it's not 20,000. I think they increased it to like another 10,000. So it just goes to show you there's so many things in place right now that's causing loads of division and unethical human rights being carried out, and people not being treated as equal to other people depending on which country you're from. A question I wanted to ask you, what could us, the general public, do to also help with the fight against the Home Office?
Thank you very much. And nobody else put their hands up, so Tony's going to answer this, and then we're going to come around and give you all the leaflets about things you're going to do, and then we're going to wrap it up, yeah?
Okay. That is the perfect question, though. That is the right question. What can everyone do? I'll say this. The reason that we can win is because we've been winning. It's not, you don't get all your victory at once. You're in many battles. And every time you're in a battle and you're fighting things through, you're learning and you're building a movement. And whenever you win, you got to understand how, because you got to immediately pass it on and share it. And we successfully fought against a charter flight to Jamaica for half of the people when the government thought that they could bury the Windrush Scandal by returning to mass deportation flights if they targeted people with criminal records. That means it was a flight almost exclusively of people who had indefinite leave to remain, because it can be taken away as soon as you get in trouble with the law. And even for like a cannabis possession or dangerous driving, there was people that were being deported who had young children that would then be traumatized as well. So you can see it's not any good to the public what they're doing, but there's a lot of lies behind it. But they couldn't bury the Windrush Scandal under that, because they ended up only exposing more the decrepency and the racism of the policy. And of the people that successfully got off that flight, there's a lot who have spoken out about it, and that has sent lessons around. So we have to shout about this. We have to refuse to accept the stigma of having an immigration problem, because it's often that people then don't talk about it, even with friends, don't even know that their friend is struggling with the Home Office and then putting on a brave face the rest of the time. We have to destigmatize it, because the stigma is like the criminalization of the black community. It's there so that a lot of injustice can be carried out, but it's covered because everyone can be like, oh, but we don't know if we support that person because they've got this stigma. So we need to break that down. That's a mass movement. And so part of it is talking everywhere. If you're in a union, start passing motions on this, because I'm in Unison and we've managed to get some national policies passed, which we're now in London region trying to make working groups to start fighting on it. So there's practical things if you are in a union. But if you're with any friends in any group that you're part of, talk about this and get in touch as soon as you know that there's anyone who might be in this position, or just simply who wants to be involved, because we're going to need to just mobilize. There'll be a time where we need to go demonstrate at the High Commissions or the Home Office. There's times where we need to go down to the tribunal, immigration tribunal, to support people and to pack out the courtrooms. We need to communicate at every level. We're not accepting the racism anymore. We're fighting back. And as soon as when people feel that, the truth is that they already know a lot of things that they could do for themselves, but it takes the motivation to do it. If you're in detention, there are things that you can do, but detention's designed to make you feel like you can do nothing. But a guy who died in Harmondsworth 3 weeks ago, there was demonstrations from the people inside, and just from speaking out, we've managed to get some injunctions on witnesses that were going to be deported, who had seen what had happened. It's someone who got ill the night before, got no help, and by the next morning was found dead. These things are happening, it takes I know I'm not giving you a short answer to exactly what you can do in a quick time, but talking about it, taking away the stigma of it, and organizing where you are with the people with you. Take these materials and get in touch, because we're serious about building a movement, fighting racism, fighting all discrimination, but understanding that immigrant rights is the central question right now. And the dangers of Brexit are real. The dangers of the increase in racism is real. So we gotta get moving. Thanks.
All right, so I'd like you all to rise. And we're going to come to the front and we're going to give everyone a leaflet. You're going to have a read. These are concrete things that you can do. You can pass on to people. But even being more aware and informed about the topic means that you're able to have discussions and pass that on to people, right? So tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend, and then everybody knows what's going on. All right, thank you very much.
History, brought to you by Scribbler P in a UK garage style. So today we're going to talk about immigration, which means when you're in one end but you move to a next end. But not just Peckham to Elephant and Castle, I'm talking far. Like brothers were jumping in boats, fam, no car. And it started time ago when brothers was still in black and white. And places like Jamaica hadn't developed yet. Like no Buju, no Sean Paul, no Vibes Cartel, no Bounty Killer, no dancehall, full stop. So Rastas were running to England, bruv. That's how desperate things were. Sharp suit, sharp suit, sharp suit. When I say, you say, we say, you say, make some affordable housing for the newly arrived immigrants. Black families live peacefully and holy shit, she's white. Integration. Mixed race people. We used to call them chalk eyes. Now we know that's not nice. Progress. Big up the ladies looking slender and fine. Mine. And the man then was put to work, lifting better, bigger bits of wood. Wagwan cuz. This old lady stole some black babies. Bear babies. Look at all the youth them pun road. Don't touch my hair. Some of the white people were getting vexed about the immigrants having money and sex. But Bondat, black people was flourishing and had bare money. Eventually brothers were even presenting the news. Big shout out to young Trevor McDonald with a rinse and curl. Things got so good immigrants even changed into colour. Yams, watermelon, fuck a day. Things weren't perfect though, because it was still ages before PlayStations and Garage was invented. Hang tight man like Crash Bandicoot. But soon Garage was invented, all thanks to immigration. Bye bye, see both. Tune in next time for more Black British history with man like me, Scribbler P.